Section 1. The Ghost on the Horizon. June 4, 1942. 10:22 a.m. Pacific Ocean, 200 miles northeast of Midway Atoll. The bridge of the Japanese heavy cruiser Tone is silent except for the crackle of radio static and the faint whine of wind over steel. An exhausted reconnaissance pilot grips his transmitter, voice tight, breath uneven. Enemy sighted, bearing 10 degrees, composition, appears to include one aircraft carrier. For a moment, no one moves. Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi stands rigid, eyes narrowing. A single carrier. That makes no sense. According to every report, every intercepted transmission, every assumption carved into the battle plan, the Americans should have only 2 carriers remaining in the Pacific. Enterprise. Hornet. The third one, the troublesome one, had been confirmed damaged at Coral Sea, burning, listing, out of action for months, Japanese intelligence had declared. And yet the pilot's next words land like a hammer. The carrier resembles Yorktown. A murmur ripples through the command spaces, disbelief first, then irritation, then something colder. Mistaken identity, surely. Carriers look similar from the air, especially at distance, especially under pressure. A tired pilot, strained eyes, a moment of confusion. That explanation is safer, cleaner, more comfortable. But as the transmission continues, the details sharpen. Flight deck markings, island structure, movement patterns. Not vague, not uncertain, specific. On the flight deck of the flagship Akagi Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo listens to the report with a face that reveals nothing. But inside his chest, something tightens. Because if the pilot is correct, then something impossible has happened. Because if that carrier is truly USS Yorktown, then the Americans have lied to the ocean itself. And the carefully calculated trap Japan has spent months preparing is no longer a trap. It is a gamble. 2 weeks earlier, 3,000 miles away, USS Yorktown limped toward Pearl Harbor like a wounded animal refusing to die. The Battle of the Coral Sea had ended with black smoke trailing behind her flight deck scarred by bomb strikes, internal compartments flooded, electrical systems unstable. Her hull had taken damage that should have sent her to dry dock on the west coast for months. That was the standard assessment. That was the reasonable timeline. That was what Japanese planners built their Midway operation around. But when Yorktown slid into Pearl Harbor on May 27th, the response waiting for her was not routine. It was frantic. Organized chaos. Controlled desperation. Admiral Chester Nimitz stood on the pier watching the carrier approach. He had already done the math. The Japanese were coming for Midway. His codebreakers, men like Commander Joseph Rochefort, had been clear. The attack was imminent. And without Yorktown he would face the most powerful carrier strike force ever assembled with only 2 decks. 2 carriers against 4. That was not a battle, that was an execution. So Nimitz issued an order that bordered on madness. You have 72 hours. Not weeks. Not months. 3 days. 72 hours to bring a shattered carrier back from the edge of the grave. When the repair crews boarded Yorktown they knew the truth immediately. Bulkheads warped, wiring mangled, fuel lines compromised, structural damage that textbooks said could not be rushed. But textbooks do not fight wars. Men do. Shipyard workers tore into her like surgeons in a battlefield tent. No ceremony, no hesitation. They worked in shifts that blurred together, eyes bloodshot, hands raw. They cannibalized parts from other ships. They welded plates in suffocating heat. They slept on steel decks when they slept at all. One chief petty officer reportedly looked at the damage and muttered, "She's dead," then picked up a torch anyway. Because dead was not an option. Pilots walked her deck as repairs raged around them. They could smell the burned metal, see the scars, hear the hammering. They knew what kind of ship they were about to take into battle. Not pristine, not perfect, but alive. Barely. By the morning of May 30th, the impossible had been declared complete. USS Yorktown was operational. Not flawless, not fully healed, but capable of launching and recovering aircraft, capable of fighting, capable of deception. And deception, it turned out, would become her most powerful weapon. As she sailed from Pearl Harbor, radio silence wrapped around her like a cloak. To the Japanese, she still existed only as a wreck in a distant intelligence report. To the American sailors aboard her, she was something else entirely. A ghost ship. A resurrected myth. They knew the enemy believed she was gone. They knew every mile they traveled carried the weight of that lie. And somewhere out there, beyond the curve of the sea, a fleet was moving with absolute confidence, never suspecting that one of the carriers they had already crossed off their list was racing toward them at full speed. On June 3rd, American scouts confirmed it. The Japanese fleet was approaching Midway. 4 carriers, hundreds of aircraft, the core of Japan's naval power. And at the center of the American response sailed 3 carriers, not 2. Enterprise, Hornet, and the one the enemy believed had died weeks earlier. USS Yorktown. By dawn on June 4th, her deck was alive with motion, crews fueling aircraft, ordnance teams loading bombs, pilots climbing into cockpits with silent focus. No speeches, no theatrics, just the steady rhythm of men who knew exactly what was at stake. They were not just going to fight. They were going to shock. Because out there, somewhere over the horizon, Japanese eyes were scanning the sea, confident they understood the battlefield. And in a matter of minutes, they would see something that should not exist. Something that should have been gone. Something that would force admirals to question everything they thought they knew. And the moment they truly understood the truth about Yorktown, the battle for Midway would already be slipping out of their control. Section 2. The illusion breaks. The sun is already high when the Japanese strike aircraft return to their carriers. Deck crews on Akagi Kaga Soryu and Huryu move with mechanical precision, hauling exhausted planes into recovery lines, pulling chocks, signaling with colored paddles. The morning strike against Midway has not gone as cleanly as hoped. Resistance was heavier, anti-aircraft fire thicker, losses higher. But still the plan holds. Or so they believe. Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo stands on the bridge of Akagi hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the horizon. He has a decision to make. The second strike force, already armed with torpedoes for an anti-ship mission, is being reconfigured again. Bombs are brought up, then torpedoes, then bombs again. Ordnance crews sweat as they wrestle heavy weapons across the hangar decks, confusion rippling downward through the chain of command. Nagumo's dilemma is rooted in a single uncertainty. How many American carriers are actually out there? Reconnaissance reports have been slow, incomplete, delayed. A scout plane from Tone should have launched earlier than it did. A mechanical delay. A small failure. The kind of tiny misstep that seems meaningless in the moment and fatal only in retrospect. By the time the delayed scout finally transmits its message, the words land with subtle devastation. Enemy sighted appears to include one aircraft carrier. One carrier. Nagumo exhales almost imperceptibly. One carrier changes everything. It means his force is still dominant. It means the Americans are desperate. It means his original plan can still be salvaged. But then comes the correction. Enemy force includes possibly a second carrier. A pause, static, uncertainty. Then finally, reluctantly, the detail that no one wants to hear. The carrier resembles Yorktown. On the bridge, officers glance at one another. Some frown, others scoff internally. Yorktown is damaged. Yorktown is crippled. Yorktown is supposed to be limping towards San Diego, not waiting out here like a knife in the dark. Nagumo does not respond outwardly, but the rhythm of the battle shifts inside him. He orders strike aircraft to be prepared for launch against the American fleet. The rearming process begins again. Torpedoes replace bombs. Bombs are moved aside. Fuel hoses snake across the hangar decks. Planes are repositioned wingtip to wingtip. It is a ballet of lethal machinery. And it is taking time. Far above the Japanese carriers, specks appear against the blue. At first they are barely noticed. High altitude, hard to distinguish from the glare, but then lookouts call out. Aircraft, many of them. The first American attackers arrive not as a hammer, but as scattered. Desperate waves. Torpedo Squadron 8 from Hornet descends toward the fleet in outdated TBD Devastators. Slow, vulnerable, courageous to the point of tragedy, Japanese fighters tear into them. Anti-aircraft guns erupt. Planes burst into flame, tumble into the sea. Almost none survive. On Yorktown, pilots listening to fragmented radio reports feel their stomachs knot. They know those voices. They know those call signs. They hear them disappear one by one. Then Torpedo Squadron 6 from Enterprise. Then Torpedo Squadron 3 from Yorktown *. Again, devastating losses. Again, near annihilation. From the Japanese perspective, it appears as though the Americans are throwing themselves into the grinder. Disorganized, inefficient, desperate, exactly what one would expect from a navy fighting with inferior numbers. Confidence begins to return, and that is precisely when the sky opens. High above, unseen during the chaos, American dive bombers have found the fleet. SBD, dauntless dive bombers from Enterprise and Yorktown roll onto their backs and begin their descent. To the men below, it is as though the sun itself has fractured. Black specks multiply, then grow, then scream. The first bombs strike Kaga*. Explosions rip through her flight deck. Fire blooms outward, fed by fully fueled aircraft and exposed ordnance. Secondary detonations shake her hull. On Akagi*, a single bomb punches through the deck near the island's superstructure. It detonates in the hangar, where torpedoes and fueled planes are packed tightly together. The blast ignites everything at once. On Soryu*, bombs walk across the deck in sequence. Each impact adds another layer to the inferno. Within minutes, 3 of Japan's 4 fleet carriers are burning catastrophically. And still, the attack is not over. Because the Japanese commanders are still misreading the battlefield. They believe they are under attack from 2 American carriers. 2. That is the assumption guiding every decision, every order, every estimate of remaining enemy strength. They do not yet understand that one of those attacks came from a ship they believed should not exist. A ship they believed had been broken at Coral Sea. A ship that should not be here. A ship that should not be launching full squadrons of dive bombers into the heart of the most powerful fleet Japan has ever assembled. On Huryu the only carrier not yet mortally wounded, Vice Admiral Yamaguchi watches the devastation through binoculars. Smoke pillars rise where sister ships had floated moments earlier. Flames climb skyward. Men run like ants across burning decks. He turns to his staff. "Find the enemy carriers," he orders quietly. There is no panic in his voice, only cold urgency. Because somewhere out there, beyond the smoke and chaos, lie the American carriers responsible for this catastrophe. And the longer it takes to find them, the more unbearable a truth begins to emerge in the back of his mind. This enemy is not weaker than expected. This enemy is not desperate. This enemy has planned this. And the most disturbing possibility of all begins to take shape. What if there are more American carriers out there than they ever anticipated? What if the assumptions that built this entire operation are collapsing in real time? What if the carrier they believed they had already defeated has not only returned, but is now helping to destroy the heart of the Imperial Japanese Navy? Because as Huryu prepares her counterstrike, her pilots will soon take off in search of the enemy. And when they finally find one American carrier and attack it, they will believe they have sunk Yorktown *. Once, they will celebrate. They will report success. They will be wrong. And when they discover the truth, the psychological impact will cut deeper than any bomb. The ghost they thought they killed will rise again. Section 3. The First Death of Yorktown. The strike from Huryu launches into a sky still thick with smoke. Japanese dive bombers form up with disciplined precision, engines humming, wings glittering in the sun. These are elite aircrews, veterans of Pearl Harbor, the Indian Ocean, the early victories that had carved Japan's dominance across half the Pacific. They have just watched 3 carriers burn. They understand what this moment requires. Find the enemy. Cripple their decks. Restore balance. The lead pilot scans the horizon, eyes aching from glare and exhaustion. Then, at last, he sees it. A gray rectangle cutting through the blue. An American carrier. The radios crackle alive with confirmation. Bearings transmitted. Coordinates logged. Excitement surges. This is the chance to answer the humiliation inflicted on their fleet only hours earlier. The dive bombers climb for altitude, circle into position, and then tilt downward. From the deck of USS Yorktown the sky transforms in seconds. Lookouts shout, claxons howl, pilots sprint. Anti-aircraft guns pivot upward, barrels tracking the falling shapes above. The ship shudders as her gunners open fire, black bursts blossoming across the heavens. You can almost feel the air tighten. Bombs begin to fall. The first strikes miss narrowly, columns of water erupting alongside the hull. The second wave finds its mark. One bomb punches through the flight deck near the forward elevator. Another detonates close to the island. A third explodes below decks. The carrier convulses. Power flickers. Smoke fills compartments. Men are thrown against bulkheads. Damage control teams move instantly, sealing doors, fighting flames, dragging the wounded from twisted metal corridors. Within minutes, Yorktown is crippled. Dead in the water. Listing slightly. Her flight operations halted. From above, the Japanese pilots observe the damage with satisfaction. They see smoke. They see halted motion. They see chaos. To them, it is unmistakable. The carrier is finished. They transmit the report with pride. Enemy carrier hit, believed sunk. On the bridge of Hiryu Vice Admiral Yamaguchi receives the message. Officers around him allow themselves the smallest breath of relief. The Americans have been struck back. The balance is shifting again. One carrier eliminated. And in the Japanese estimation, there were only two to begin with. That means only one remains. One carrier left to hunt. One carrier left to destroy. The psychological impact is immediate. Morale lifts. The belief that the battle can still be salvaged takes hold. The nightmare of the morning begins to feel like a brutal but temporary setback. But on the deck of USS Yorktown the reality is very different. Damage control crews work with terrifying calm. Power is restored to key systems. Fires are contained. Flooding is managed. Engineers reroute electricity. Officers move between stations, checking, assessing, recalculating. The ship is wounded, but she is not dead. Not yet. Within an hour, the impossible happens again. Her engines turn. Slowly at first, then steadily. A cheer ripples across the deck. Not loud, not celebratory, just a quiet, stunned acknowledgement of something that feels almost supernatural. Yorktown lives. And not only that, she will fight again. Meanwhile, Japanese reconnaissance continues its search for the remaining American carrier. Because from their perspective, the situation is now simple. 3 Japanese carriers lost. 1 American carrier destroyed. 1 American carrier still out there. That is the math guiding every decision now. On Hiryu aircraft are refueled. Ordnance crews move with renewed urgency. A second strike is prepared. This time torpedo bombers, the killing blow. They launch again into the afternoon sky. Hours pass. Then comes the second contact report. Another American carrier spotted. Position transmitted. Confirmation made. And once again, Japanese pilots line up their approach, descending toward the enemy. Below them, they see a carrier maneuvering through the sea. They see anti-aircraft fire rising. They see fighters scrambling to intercept. To them, this confirms everything. This must be the second carrier. This must be the last one. They do not know that the ship they attacked earlier, the one they reported sunk, the one they mentally erased from the battlefield, is the same one now waiting beneath them again. USS Yorktown The torpedo bombers press their attack. Torpedoes drop into the water. White trails streak toward the hull. Maneuvering is limited. The carrier tries to turn. Crew brace for impact. 2 torpedoes slam home. The explosions tear open her side. The force knocks men off their feet. Compartments flood rapidly. The list increases dangerously. The engines fail again. This time, the damage is catastrophic. There is no masking it. No denying it. The order comes at last. Prepare to abandon ship. Men gather on deck, some wounded, some stunned. Some refusing to look back at the vessel that has carried them through hell and back in the span of a single day. Lifeboats lower. Rafts deploy. The ocean fills with survivors. From the air, Japanese pilots watch the carrier slow, list, and fall behind. To them, this confirms victory beyond question. They radio back. Enemy carrier sunk. 2 reports. 2 sinkings. 2 American carriers destroyed. The conclusion is obvious. The enemy carrier force has been annihilated. On *Huryu*, officers allow themselves to believe it. For a brief, fragile window of time, they believe the battle has turned in their favor, that Japan has endured the blow and struck back decisively, that the Midway operation can still succeed. But truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply buried. Because as the sun lowers in the western sky, American scouts are still in the air. And they are about to find something the Japanese no longer believe exists. The final Japanese carrier, Huryu. And when American dive bombers roll toward her decks that afternoon, it will not just be an attack of steel and fire. It will be the moment the illusion finally shatters. The moment Japanese command realizes that they miscounted, misjudged, misread everything. The moment they understand that USS Yorktown did not just return from the dead once, but twice, and that her resurrection has already sealed the fate of the Imperial Japanese Navy. Section 4. The Realization. Late afternoon, June 4th, 1942. The air over the Pacific is thick with smoke and disbelief. On the flight deck of Huryu*, officers study incoming reports with growing unease. The earlier confidence is fading. Something is wrong. The Americans were supposed to be finished. 2 carriers destroyed. That was the logic. That was the math. But the sky refuses to agree. A lookout's voice cuts across the deck. High-altitude aircraft, multiple formations. Vice Admiral Yamaguchi lifts his binoculars. At first he sees nothing but glare. Then faint shapes begin to materialize. Tiny specks growing larger, too many. Dive bombers. American. Again. This should not be happening. There should be no carriers left to launch this many aircraft. The realization does not arrive as a single thought. It arrives as fragments. A cold tightening in the chest. A quiet glance between officers. The uncomfortable awareness that the assumptions guiding the entire operation may be wrong. Air raid sirens scream. Fighters scramble. Anti-aircraft crews race to their guns. But there is no time to fully prepare. The American planes are already rolling over into their dives. From above, the world tilts. SBD dauntless dive bombers from Enterprise descend like falling knives. Pilots lock onto *Huryu*'s deck. Crosshairs settle. Hands tighten on release levers. Bombs fall. The first detonates near the forward elevator. The blast rips upward, scattering debris like shrapnel rain. The second strikes aft, erupting in fire. The third punches deep into the hangar deck, where fueled aircraft wait for launch. The effect is immediate. Fire, smoke, chaos. The deck becomes an inferno within seconds. Aircraft ignite where they sit. Ordnance cooks off violently. Shockwaves ripple through the hull. Men are thrown to the deck. Orders vanish into the roar. From nearby ships, officers watch in horror as the last surviving carrier of the First Air Fleet begins to burn. Yamaguchi remains on the bridge. He understands now. Not fully, not in detail, but enough. The Americans did not come with 2 carriers. They came with 3. And one of them, the one his pilots had already claimed destroyed, had never truly left the battle. Somewhere in the confusion of reports, assumptions, and wishful thinking, they had built their entire understanding of the enemy around a lie. Not an intentional lie. A convenient one. That Yorktown was gone. That she was out of the war. That she did not matter. But she had mattered more than anyone realized. Because every calculation of American strength had been based on her absence. Every decision Nagumo made that morning had leaned on the belief that only two carriers opposed him. Every risk taken had assumed numerical superiority. And now, as *Huryu* burns, that truth becomes inescapable. They had not been fighting two American carriers. They had been fighting three. And one of them had come back from the dead. Far across the water, survivors from USS Yorktown float in the sea. Oil slicks shimmer around them, wreckage drifts. The carrier lies crippled in the distance, silent, listing, wounded almost beyond recognition. Men cling to rafts, to debris, to one another. Some stare toward the horizon, waiting for something. Rescue, death, they do not know which. Then they hear it. A distant sound. Engines. Aircraft. American. Heads lift, eyes narrow. They watch as tiny shapes cross the sky, heading west, toward the Japanese fleet, toward the enemy that believed Yorktown was gone. A murmur spreads across the survivors. They're still fighting. They're still hitting them. Even now, even after everything, the battle continues. And with every explosion that blossoms on the horizon, the truth grows heavier on the other side of the ocean. The Japanese had misread the battlefield from the very beginning. They had underestimated American intelligence, underestimated American resolve, underestimated American capacity to repair, to improvise, to endure. But most of all, they had underestimated what the reappearance of a single ship could do to the psychology of war. Because Yorktown did not just launch aircraft. She launched doubt, confusion, false assumptions, and those invisible weapons proved just as lethal as bombs. By nightfall, the outcome is unavoidable. 4 Japanese carriers, all lost. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Huryu, the heart of Japan's naval aviation, destroyed in a single day. And only then, when reports are pieced together, when surviving pilots are debriefed, when intelligence officers compare notes, does the full picture finally emerge. They had attacked the same carrier twice. They had reported her sunk twice. They had built their confidence on those reports. And both times, USS Yorktown had refused to die when expected. The ghost had not only appeared, it had altered the course of the battle. But the story of Yorktown does not end drifting in silence on the sea, because even after Midway, even after her crew abandoned her, her role in the war was not yet finished. And what happens next, in the days after the battle, will turn her from a symbol of survival into something even more haunting. A sacrifice, a final act, a legacy that neither side will ever forget. Section 5, The Final Wound. June 5, 1942. Morning light returns to a battlefield that no longer resembles victory or defeat, only aftermath. The ocean is scattered with debris, twisted metal, floating planks, empty helmets. The smell of smoke still hangs low over the water, carried by a wind that feels almost respectful now, as if the Pacific itself understands what has been lost here. USS Yorktown lies silent. She is not moving, her deck is dark, her hull lists heavily to port, but she is still afloat. And that matters. A salvage party boards her carefully. Damage control teams return to compartments they fought in just hours before. Pumps begin to work again. Hoses are rigged. Temporary power lines run across shattered corridors. Men move quietly, deliberately, like doctors around a patient who has already died once and is somehow still breathing. The decision is made. She will be towed. There is still hope. Not hope of battle, Not hope of immediate return, but hope of survival. Hope that she can be brought back to Pearl Harbor, repaired properly this time, and live on. A destroyer, USS Hammond comes alongside to assist. Lines are passed, equipment transferred. The two ships sit together on the open sea, fragile and exposed. But the enemy is not gone. Not entirely. Far beneath the surface, where the light never reaches, a Japanese submarine moves slowly through the wreckage field. I-168. Its commander has been listening, waiting, watching. He has heard reports of the battle. He knows the carriers are gone, but he also knows something else. The Americans are still here, still exposed, still vulnerable. And one crippled carrier, motionless on the water, is the most tempting target imaginable. Periscope raised, he scans the horizon. And there she is. The damaged giant. Barely alive. A wounded symbol. He does not know her name, but he understands her value. He orders the attack. Torpedoes leave their tubes in silence. No warning. No dramatic buildup. Just cold inevitability. On the surface, the first indication is a shout. Torpedoes. There is barely time to react. One torpedo strikes USS Hammond amidships. The destroyer erupts in a violent explosion, snapping in half almost instantly. Men are thrown into the sea. Fuel ignites. Debris rains down across the water. A second torpedo slams into Yorktown. The already broken hull absorbs the impact with a kind of weary acceptance. The list worsens. Flooding spreads uncontrollably. Pumps fight, then fail. Bulkheads groan. The ship settles lower. There is no chaos now. Only resignation. The salvage teams know the truth immediately. This is the wound she will not survive. Orders are given calmly. Men withdraw, equipment abandoned. The remaining crew is evacuated one final time. Lifeboats lower. Rafts deploy. Survivors look back at the ship that has carried them through Coral Sea, through Midway, through resurrection and sacrifice. No one cheers. No one speaks. They just watch. On June 7, 1942, USS Yorktown finally rolls to her side and slips beneath the surface of the Pacific. Not in fire, not in glory, but in silence. A slow disappearance. A ghost finally returning to the deep. Months later, in Japan, surviving officers study the disaster of Midway in quiet rooms filled with cigarette smoke and paper reports. There are no excuses left. No comforting illusions. Only questions. How had the Americans known? How had the trap been anticipated? How had the fleet been ambushed so completely? And inevitably, the discussion returns to the carrier that should not have been there. Yorktown. The ship that intelligence had marked as crippled. The ship that should have been absent from the equation. The ship whose reappearance had skewed every calculation, every assumption, every decision. They realize, slowly, uncomfortably, that the battle had been psychologically compromised from the start. Because when Japanese commanders believed they faced two carriers, they acted with confidence. When they believed they had sunk one, they acted with renewed optimism. When they believed they had sunk both, they almost believed the battle was already won. But all of those beliefs were built on one fatal misunderstanding. That USS Yorktown was gone. Her return had distorted their perception of reality. Her survival had created false victories. Her presence had introduced doubt at precisely the moments when clarity was most needed. She had not just launched aircraft. She had manipulated the enemy's mind. In the years after the war, historians would write about Midway as a triumph of intelligence, of code breaking, of strategy, of timing. All of that is true. But speak to the men who were there, the pilots, the deck crews, the engineers, the sailors who walked *Yorktown *S decks, and they will tell you something else. They will tell you about the smell of burned steel as they repaired her in Pearl Harbor, about the exhaustion that blurred their vision as they worked 72 straight hours, about the moment her engines came back online when no one thought they would, about the pride of knowing the enemy believed she was dead while she was very much alive. They will tell you that for a brief, extraordinary span of time, they were part of something larger than orders and operations. They were part of a lie the enemy believed. And that lie saved lives. That lie sank carriers. That lie changed the war. Today, far beneath the Pacific, the wreck of USS Yorktown rests in darkness, her hull preserved by cold, her decks frozen in time, aircraft still scattered where they were last parked, equipment still in place. A museum no human eye sees. But her story remains above the surface. Because the battle for Midway is remembered not just for the carriers lost, or the fleets destroyed, or the strategies revealed. It is remembered for the moment when Japanese admirals looked toward the horizon, heard a report they did not believe, and slowly began to understand that something impossible had happened. That the carrier they were certain had been sunk had come back. And by the time they accepted that truth, it was already too late. End